There has been a ton of exciting NBA action so far in this young 25-26 season. The defending champion Thunder picked up right where they left off last year, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's numbers are nearly identical to his MVP campaign. Luka Magic has been thriving in what will be his first full season for the Lakers, leading the league in scoring, dropping nearly 35 points a game. The Detroit Pistons are shocking everyone in the East, as the young duo of Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren has proven to be a force so far. But despite all the amazing play from the countless stars of today's game, there is one 7'4" phenom that has captivated us all and made basketball look easier than anyone, maybe ever. Yes, Victor Wembanyama was the talk of the offseason in 2025. He participated in a 10-day retreat with monks in China, and the images that came out went viral. He met up with the legend Akeem Olajuwon to learn more about footwork and presence on the court. And then he linked up with the always intense Kevin Garnett to learn from him about mentality and the physical grind of the game. Many skeptics felt Wemby's summer was a little excessive and wouldn't lead to success for his Spurs. But when the 25-26 season opened, Wemby showed the world he's ready to take his game to the next level. In his first 12 games, Wemby led San Antonio, a team that many felt would not make the playoffs in the preseason, to an 8-4 record, which put them right in the mix with the best teams in the Western Conference. Unfortunately, Victor sustained a calf injury, which is going to have him out of action over the next few weeks. But, assuming he comes back with no issues, he should hopefully still meet the requirements needed to be eligible for award season at the end of the year, which gives us a unique opportunity to do an interesting exercise. Since 1990, there have been 5 centers who were able to win at least one Most Valuable Player award, with the incomparable Nikola Jokic as the only man to win multiple at the position during this span. Now, looking at those MVP seasons from those 5 individuals, and the most recent one from the Joker in 2024, if we just shrank the sample size to the first 12 games of those seasons, does what we have seen to start the season from Wemby stack up or surpass the starts from these all-time greats who played his position at their very best? Here's how we'll do this. To keep it consistent between the 6 players, including Wemby, let's break it down into 5 unique categories, where we'll rank each guy 1 through 6. Then, from there, we can use this ranking system to come up with an average to determine if the young Frenchman is at least on the right trajectory of an MVP season. Here are the categories. Hype in the offseason, meaning how much media attention did you gain or extracurricular activities did you do to set yourself up for a big season? Because much like a big boxing match or MMA fight, the build-up can enhance what you'll see when the bell rings on fight night. Team success, because there should never be an MVP that isn't leading his team to victories. Best single game within the 12-game span. We'll use the game score stat to select the best game from a stat standpoint, but then we'll deep dive into the context of how that game went down to determine the most accurate pecking order for our centers. Individual stats, stacking up the raw numbers between the 5 guys and ranking them accordingly, as well as the context of where they stacked up to their peers in that particular season. Finally, the eye test, or most viral highlights, because it's one thing to have stats and win games, but for many fans, as much as we sometimes don't want to admit it, it's also about how you get it done. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we use history to determine if the start of Victor Wembanyama's 25-26 season stacks up to the greatest seasons by a center of all time. The first category is, of course, off-season hype leading into their MVP year. Now, the way this is ranked will probably be the most subjective of all the categories. So make sure to write in the comment section below who you feel had the most hype entering their respective MVP season. Let's start with Hakeem Olajuwon in the summer of 1993. Obviously, the biggest news story of that offseason was the shocking retirement of Michael Jordan at just 30 years old, just before the start of the season in October of that year. This shook the NBA to its core, but also it opened things up wide for every other team in the NBA, as MJ's Bulls had a 3-year stranglehold on the NBA title. This couldn't have been better timing for the Dream, as after a few shaky years in the early 90s between the big man and upper management, Olajuwon was finally at peace and happy to be in Houston. The Rockets had lost a heartbreaking Game 7 by just 3 points to the Seattle Supersonics in the second round of the 1993 playoffs. The game went to overtime, and Dream played 50 minutes, nearly dropping a triple-double, but to no avail. Olajuwon and his team carried this bitter taste into the summer, which served as major motivation for the following season. Teammates observed a new, intense focus in training camp from their leader, who would be ready to take the Rockets on an all-time run over the next 2 seasons. Speaking of the following season, let's look at David Robinson's offseason in the summer of 1994. The Admiral was actually second to the Dream and had a legitimate shot to win MVP in 93-94. Thanks to feats like winning the scoring title with a 71-point game in his last chance on the final night of the regular season. For some context with that scoring explosion, since we have seen a handful of 70-plus point games in the last decade, Robinson's 71 was the most points scored in an NBA game from 1978 all the way to Kobe's 81 in 2006. Robinson's spectacular 1993-94 regular season performance led to the cover of Sports Illustrated's March 7, 1994 issue with the headline, Mr. MVP, indicating how close it truly was between David and Hakeem that year in the eyes of the media. While Robinson didn't win the 93-94 MVP, the media attention and expectations were significant for the Admiral and the Spurs throughout the summer heading into the 94-95 season, especially considering the fact that Robinson was the highest paid player in the league by a decent margin at the time. Moving on to the summer before the millennium, the Lakers were looking to maximize their time having Shaquille O'Neal when he was at minimum the most dominant force the NBA had seen in nearly 40 years since Wilt Chamberlain. So to do this, they brought in the best possible coach available in 1999, the Zen Master, Phil Jackson. One of the first things Phil instructed Shaq to do during the offseason was rest. The big man was taking a beating by every big brute in the league, constantly being fouled and maybe getting the call half the time thanks to his bruising play style and imposing size to begin with. So Jackson felt Shaq needed to recuperate to get ready for the long season. The Lakers would have the second best odds before the 99-2000 season began to win it all. So needless to say, the hype and pressure was on after several seasons of playoff disappointment and even countless sweeps. Next, we shift the time machine to the summer of 2022, where, ironically, we see Joel Embiid taking a page out of Shaq's playbook and using this offseason for rest and recovery. This was uncommon for the process, however, because he would typically spend his time in the gym sharpening his game. But after finishing a close second in the previous 2 MVP races to Nikola Jokic, Embiid decided to care less about the coveted Michael Jordan trophy and focus on making his Philadelphia 76ers the best team in basketball. Finally, we move to the very next summer in 2023, where one thing was undeniable. Nikola Jokic is a very, very special basketball player. After not winning the MVP in the regular season, Jokic decided the only way to remedy that was to go get the MVP in the finals, and nearly averaged a 30-point triple-double over the entire 2023 playoffs to get himself and his Denver Nuggets their first ever NBA championship. The Joker was seen as the unquestioned best player in the world after those finals. And naturally, the Serbian spent the summer in his beloved homeland celebrating the victory with his people, and touched a basketball very little, according to him. So, after breaking down each MVP center's offseason before their award, here's how I would rank their hype heading into the season. After careful consideration to everyone's situation, I think I would slide Wemby's 2025 offseason here, behind David Robinson and Shaq. Again, this really all comes down to preference and what you value. So be sure to comment below where you would fit Wemby's eventful offseason amongst these legendary centers. Next up, team success. Obviously, we'll look at these centers' records through the first 12 games of the season, but we'll also look at stats like net rating to determine whether they were blowing opponents out or barely scraping by. Let's work backwards this time and start with Wemby this season. Victor led the Spurs, a team that was only expected to make the play-in if they were lucky, to an 8-4 record, including being undefeated in the Spurs' first 5 games to start their campaign. This record would put them on pace for a 55-win season, shattering their over-under projection from before the year began. Before Wembanyama's calf strain, San Antonio was 5th in net rating at plus 6.2. And of the Spurs' 4 losses, only one was a game where they took an L by more than 5 points with Victor on the floor. Next, Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets in 2023 to 2024. After the first 12 games of the season, Denver was tied for first in the West with a 9-3 record and won 8 of their first 9 games. They were 3rd in the league in net rating at plus 7.3, and that was in large part due to the Joker's unselfish influence on the Nuggets, as Denver was averaging nearly 30 assists per game during this 12-game stretch as a team. Moving back a season and looking at Joel Embiid's 76ers, even though this would go on to be his MVP season, no Embiid year would be complete without the big man missing a few games for one reason or another. Joel would go 500 through his first 12 games played of the season, and would have a net rating of only plus 1.4 with Joel on the floor. 4 of those losses were by 9 points or more, and they would start the season a concerning 1-4 through their first 5 games. Now we look at Shaq's 99 to 2000 Lakers. The Diesel would be suspended 1 game within LA's first 12 for his infamous on-court scrap with future broadcasting buddy Charles Barkley. But in LA's first 12 games with their leading man in the middle, they were 9-3 and had a top 6 net rating of plus 4.3. Despite only having those 3 losses, each of them were by 9 points or more, including a 97-82 beatdown by their eventual Western Conference Finals opponent, the Portland Trail Blazers. The opening of the Admirals' 94-95 MVP season actually was fairly mediocre from a team standpoint, as David Robinson only led his Spurs to a 6-6 record. Many of these losses were close, as 4 of the 6 L's for San Antonio were decided by less than 5 points. Robinson's Spurs had a net rating of only plus 0.5 in this stretch, which is the closest to negative of any season by any of these all-time great big men. Last, but certainly not least, we turn to the dream, and the 93-94 Rockets, who dominated their competition to start the season. Olajuwon led Houston to a perfect 12-0 record, and they faced some of the toughest competition that season had to offer. Barkley's Suns, Reggie's Pacers, Stockton and Malone in Utah, and the new-look Bulls led by Scottie Pippen. Their net rating was an impressive plus 10.5 during this undefeated run, and were allowing a league-leading 89.9 points per game, thanks in large part to their man in the middle protecting the rim like few ever have. If we're just using the information given about each team here, this is where I would rank the start of each of these great seasons from a team success standpoint. Obviously, Hakeem's Rockets going undefeated locked them in at the top. But where do Wemby's Spurs fall within these? His team start was definitely stronger than David Robinson's or Joel Embiid's, but I think we can slide him into the third spot, behind Joker's Nuggets, but in front of Shaq's Lakers. Shaq did get one more win than Victor, but the Spurs net rating is almost double what the Lakers had in 2000, and that puts the Spurs from this season into the top 3. Again, write your rankings in the comment section below. The next category will be each center's single best game to open the season. Just to remind everyone, this will start with each player's highest single game score out of their first 12 games. For those who don't know, game score is a single stat used to estimate a player's productivity in a single game by using all metrics within a player's box score. A 10 is considered an average game, so maybe they scored a lot and got some boards, but had low efficiency and a lot of turnovers as well. A 20 would be a very good game, essentially the same rules as the 10-point game, but now the stat line is one step closer to perfection. Most 20-point triple-doubles can be found in this range. 30 plus is considered excellent, and that's where we'll find all of the games we are talking about today. So you'll have a good idea of what a score like that looks like as we dive into these great centers games. Here are the best 6 games by game score from each center now listed on the screen. Obviously with no context, Joel Embiid's insane 54.4 game score against the Utah Jazz should take the number 1 spot, as it is the 13th highest score ever put up in NBA history. But let's deep dive as much as we can into each game and get the context that surrounds these insane individual performances. Since we're already on the topic, let's start at the Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia, where Joel Embiid, in his 10th game of his MVP season, had scored, at that point, more buckets in a game than ever before in his career. But it was so much more than that. Utah had Philly down by double digits in the first half, so Joel would take over in the second half and especially the fourth quarter, where he dropped 26 efficient points and shut down all opposing shots on the other end in the clutch, getting 5 of his 7 blocked shots when the Sixers needed them most. He'd finish with 59 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists to go along with those 7 blocks. Next, we'll travel to the Summit in Houston, Texas, and look at the best game for Joel's basketball predecessor, Hakeem Olajuwon, who put up a game score of 36.7. The Minnesota Timberwolves, who would go on to have an embarrassing 20-62 record, had absolutely zero answers for the dream. Now here's where it gets crazy. Hakeem went 15 of 17 from the field, with one of those shots being a last-second heave. So he really missed only one shot. But what really separates this performance is how he got his buckets. Only one of Olajuwon's 15 baskets was a dunk, and he had no layups in the contest. The other 14 came from between 6 and 16 feet, torturing a young Christian Laettner and Minnesota. Let's next head out to the Staples Center in its opening season, where a healthy Shaq at the peak of his athletic powers hit a game score of 42.1 This happened to be Phil Jackson's first time coaching against the Chicago Bulls, so there was a little added juice for this early season game for the Lakers. This game was a classic example of the major problem with trying to defend Shaq in his prime, as Chicago, with an awful record of 1-7, didn't have a 7-footer in the rotation besides veteran Will Perdue, who was a season away from retirement. So Shaq literally didn't miss a single shot until the fourth quarter. So the Bulls did what many would resort to in this era, and that's send the Diesel to the free throw line with the Hack-a-Shaq method. And O'Neal would shoot 31 free throws that night, the most he would ever take in a regular season game. Shaq would make, for him, a respectable 19 of those free throws. At the end of the night, the big Aristotle would drop 41 points, 17 boards, and 7 blocks to get the win against Phil Jackson's former Chicago Bulls. Turning our attention now to the old Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. David Robinson led his Spurs against the Portland Trail Blazers through a war that saw 26 lead changes in the closely contested battle. The Admiral led his team in 3 major stat categories with 36 points, 18 rebounds, and 4 assists to get San Antonio over the hump against Clyde Drexler and company, finishing with a game score of 35.4. Now we head north to the Mile High City to watch Nikola Jokic have a classic Joker performance against the Pelicans in Ball Arena. Now, when I say classic, I should say average, as this game score from the Joker, despite being an insane 36.5, almost falls out of his top 10 on this season as a whole. This really felt like a game that 10 to 15 years from now, when people ask, what was Nikola Jokic like in his prime? They'll say something that would accurately describe all the great stuff he did in this game. Something like, he could do literally anything on offense. He could be a traditional big man, setting screens or getting buckets in the post, but he could also seamlessly turn into a facilitating guard, jump-starting the entire offense in the half court, or the fast break with passes that only the greatest point guards of all time could make consistently. Jokic finished with 35 points, 14 rebounds, and 12 assists, and the Denver Nuggets overcame a 20-point first-half deficit to beat the Pelicans 134-116. Last but not least, we head back to Texas, this time to the American Airlines Center in Dallas, to take a look at Wemby's highest game score of 37.6, which happened to be the season opener against the #1 pick Cooper Flagg, respected defender Anthony Davis, and the rest of the new-look Dallas Mavericks. Many expected Victor to take the logical next step in his basketball development. But the basketball world was put on notice after this first game of the season, where it felt like Wemby was radiating with this energy that said, I'm here to take over. He had 40 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks on 71.4% shooting, and only made 1 3, but that shot, an entire sequence, was one that only a player of Wembanyama's size and skill set could have pulled off. After breaking these fantastic games all down as much as possible, here is how I rank them. They did get sorted almost exactly in order from highest game scored to lowest, with the exception of Wemby actually being ranked lower than his score should have had him ranked. The answer for that is simple. Despite a game filled with awesome highlights that will definitely help him in a future category, Wemby was the only one of these 6 centers whose game was a blowout. Now yes, Wemby was a major reason for said blowout, but it's a little more impressive when a player can have a great performance in a comeback or a closely contested game. So that's why I gave the edge to a few of the centers above him. Now that we've seen their team stats through the first 12 games, and their best single game in that stretch? Let's look at their complete stats through this opening stretch in the season and look at how they compare to each other as well as the other players from their era. Before his calf injury, Wemby was averaging 26.2 points, 12.9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.1 steals, and an insane for this era 3.6 blocks per game. That was almost a block and a half ahead of any other player in the league. Nikola Jokic managed to be top 6 in points, rebounds, and assists after 12 games to start the season. He averaged 29.7 points, a league-leading 14.1 rebounds, and 9.2 assists per game, which made him the only center in the top 10 for dimes. He was also insanely efficient, with a true shooting percentage of 64.9, which was number 1 in the league for all players shooting at least 20 shots per game. The process was a bucket-getting machine in the 22-23 season, dropping 32.3 points, 10.1 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and 1.8 blocks per game. His style as a scorer was just too hard to guard, and he would end up at the line shooting 12.2 free throws a game and making an amazing 10.2, which would be over a point more than Luka Doncic in second. Under coach Phil Jackson and the triangle offense, Shaq's numbers would improve greatly over the previous season, averaging more points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and minutes per game in 99-2000. Shaq would also start the season without Kobe Bryant, who was out with an injury to start the year. So the offense only had one focal point, and the Diesel capitalized on that opportunity. He averaged 28.8 points, 13.4 rebounds, and 3.3 blocks per game, to go with shooting nearly 60% from the field, which was by far and away the best field goal percentage in the league of anyone taking Shaq's shots per game or more. David Robinson was at his physical apex by age 29 in the fall of 1994, and he seemed to be everywhere on the floor for his Spurs, stuffing the stat sheet wherever possible. The Admiral averaged 27.3 points, 13.8 rebounds, exactly 4 assists, which was 1 assist more than any center in the league at that point, 1.4 steals, and 3.4 blocks to kick off his MVP campaign. Finally, let's look at the Dream's numbers on his undefeated run with the Rockets. Hakeem dropped 26.7 points, 13.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 1.8 steals, and a league-leading 4.1 blocks per game, narrowly edging out guys like Mutombo, Shaq, and David Robinson to start the year blocking shots. He was just so consistent, opening the season with one of his 6 career 5x5 performances, and never looked back, leading the Rockets to an all-time great start. The rankings here had razor-thin margins, as we are mostly looking at the best center seasons of all time. But this is how I would do the order, based solely on their numbers over the course of the first 12 games. If this was a 5-game sample size, and it was just the games Wemby played during their unbeaten streak, then the Frenchman might have cracked the top 3 or even top 2. But many of these centers have comparable or even better numbers despite a slower average pace of play, and for the 3 older centers, absolutely zero presence at the 3-point line. The final category might be the most fun, but also the most subjective, and that's the eye test, meaning which center had the most entertaining or most impressive game to watch during their MVP season. Now, for the 3 more recent players in this exercise, we'll be able to show the exact highlights from those 12 games easily. But for the older players, that is unfortunately a more difficult challenge. So, because this is such a visual category, In order to give everyone close to the same amount of footage, Shaq, David Robinson, and Hakeem Olajuwon will all have highlights from different points in their seasons, and they'll count only for this category. Let's start with Shaq, because while he did have the thunderous jams and a trademark powerful play style, what makes this season stand out in particular from the Diesel is his quickness and shooting touch with his jump hook. The subtle shoulder fakes and insane ability to second jump as swift as a man half his weight is what pops off of any screen. And that same ability made him a monster shot blocker during this season in particular because of the shape he was in. David Robinson's offensive style was so different from Shaq's, but similar in the sense that it was predictable, yet impossible to stop. In the half court, Robinson would typically set up his 15-foot mid-range jumper that most players of his size were simply not taking at this time. Once he forced the defense to respect that shot, he'd work in a lethal pump fake that would have defenders dead to rights. And that's when the dunks would come, early and often, from the left-handed beast. In transition, he was the Giannis of his era, a muscle-bound freak flying through the air at 7'1" and throwing down awesome alley-oops that made the Alamo Dome roar. As a defender, he carried San Antonio and used his lateral quickness and his unique, dominant left hand to throw off drivers and stop countless layups and dunks. When it comes to lateral movement and footwork, however, there is only one GOAT at the center position, and that's Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. At age 31, a finally at peace Hakeem was at his best from a basketball IQ standpoint, while still having the majority of his athleticism and quickness from his 20s that put him on the map in the late 80s. The result on the floor was one of the most unique players the game of basketball had ever seen. All effort, all the time, on offense and defense. He would spin and pirouette his way to the most beautiful ways to score 2 points. Not to mention the lethal post fadeaway that allowed all the extra stuff to work in the first place. It was his keen understanding of the fundamentals that allowed him to stack the more complicated moves on top of it. Moving into the modern era, let's look at Joel Embiid. His game is so complete for his size. It's almost like you took Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal and morphed all their skills and qualities, then added a three-point jumper to it for the modern game. And that gives you who we all know now as the Process. He has all of Hakeem's footwork and touch, yet also Shaq's size and power advantage over the competition. Plus, an ability to draw fouls that nobody had ever seen at his position. Defenses had an impossible task trying to stop all of Embiid's weapons during his MVP year. Next up, the basketball savant, Nikola Jokic. I've only heard of one other player in NBA history be referred to as a savant, and that's Larry Bird, who compares to Jokic in so many ways. Aggressive on the boards, unselfish, and a flawless passer that will throw the ball right by a clueless defender for easy assists, but at the same time, as deadly a shooter from the triple threat or the post as you'll ever see, thanks to a rainbow jumper that they both share. He's usually the largest player on the floor, yet he's often bringing the ball up like he's Magic Johnson, pushing the break and either finding the open man with pinpoint accuracy or scoring himself. And that brings us to who this video is all about. Victor Wembanyama, who legitimately takes the best parts of all these great centers games and morphs them into one all-around freak of a basketball player. In just this one sequence from earlier against Dallas, we can see elements of all 5 of these MVPs who came before him. This block is Robinson and Olajuwon-esque. Then he brings the ball up court from the 5 position like Nikola Jokic or Shaq at his peak. Then he outskills his matchup offensively with a step-back 3, just like a prime Joel Embiid. It's why we as fans get so excited about this 22-year-old phenom, because we can see it anytime Wemby steps on the floor. He's shades of our favorite big men, and then adds his own aggressive flair to it that makes him just so unique and special. In this category, Wemby, because of this morphing of all the best skills, is definitely number 1 on the eye test list, followed by Shaq, Embiid, Jokic, The Dream, and Robinson. But definitely rank them how you think they should be lined up in the comments section below. After tallying up all the numbers, using their ranking in each category, assigning 6 points if you finished first, and 1 point if you finished 6th, here's how it shook out for all 6 big men. As you can clearly see, it was extremely close at the top, with both Wemby and Jokic getting exactly 19 points and tying underneath Shaq for 2nd place. The Diesel, despite never winning a single category outright, had an average above the rest for consistently placing in the top 3 in all but the team success category. So, what does this whole hypothetical exercise mean for Wemby this year? Well, for one, it shows that his start to this season was on trajectory to be one of the greatest seasons by a center in NBA history. And 2, it means that if his Spurs are able to maintain their winning ways, Victor Wembanyama will have a claim to get his first MVP and maybe even DPOY as well.